Are you dreaming of waterfront living in northern Michigan, but torn between the tranquility of being on a river or the wide open beauty of being on a lake? You're not alone. And today we're diving into one of the most common questions. Should I live on a lake or a river? If we haven't met yet, I'm Gino D'Angelo, a local Northern Michigan real estate broker, and I have over 20 years experience helping people decide this very question. If you're serious about moving to Northern Michigan or even just daydreaming, you have come to the right place. This video will help you picture what it could actually be like to live on the water in Northern Michigan. And before we get into it, if this type of content seems like your thing, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss future videos. I break down the lifestyle, housing market, and hidden gems right here in Northern Michigan every single week. And if you want more behind the scenes insights, make sure you subscribe to my newsletter at ginosguide.com. Let's start with what it feels like to live on the water, because the vibe is totally different depending on if you live on a lake or a river. Living on a river in Northern Michigan makes you feel like you're living in a nature preserve. The first thing you need to understand about living on a river in Northern Michigan is that there are actually two types of rivers here. You have the smaller, tranquil rivers like the Pigeon River or the Sturgeon River that you can kayak, canoe, or tube down. These rivers are much shallower and more narrow and are not conducive to watercraft, meaning you can't take your jet ski down these rivers. However, there are also much bigger rivers in Northern Michigan where you can take a jet ski or really any size boat. Places like the Indian River or the Crooked River, which are what connect the bigger lakes, allow you to have any type of boat you want and are a much different experience than the earlier rivers I mentioned. So when you're thinking about living on the river, you really need to determine what you want your lifestyle to be. If you're someone that wants to have your boat docked in your backyard, ready for you to go anywhere in Northern Michigan, then you're going to want one of the bigger rivers. If you're looking for a peaceful river retreat, then consider some of the smaller kayak, canoe friendly rivers. And that's one thing that I think makes the river scene so interesting in Northern Michigan is just how varied the two different lifestyles are. I recently sold a client of mine a house on Big Sky Trail at Indian River. What's nice about an area like this is they have large lots. I'm talking 10 acres or more with a gentle slope down to the Pigeon River. This was a really great fit for my clients because they wanted the true up north riverfront cabin in the woods experience, and they got it 100 times over. I also sold somebody a house on the Indian River in Indian River where they had a 25-foot boat in their backyard and loved the ability to go between Mullet Lake and Burt Lake whenever they wanted. One thing that rivers typically don't offer is a beach, and that is something that a lot of people who buy waterfront homes in Northern Michigan are looking for. In fact, as simple as it sounds, that is one of the first questions I ask somebody when they're looking for waterfront in Northern Michigan and they're not quite sure if they're open to a river or want to stay on a lake. A lot of people want the beach for their kids or grandkids or even themselves. Others are okay with the river because they don't plan to use the beach anyways. I had one client describe living on a lake as having a giant playground in your backyard, and that sums it up perfectly. What's beautiful about living on a lake is you can jet ski, boat, tube, swim, jump off the dock anytime you want. And I think that's what makes living on the water in Northern Michigan incredibly special. Also, when determining whether to live on a lake or river in Northern Michigan, deciding what you want your view to be every single day should play a major part in that. Now, if you're living on a lake or a river in Northern Michigan, your view is going to be stunning no matter what. The question you need to ask is, do you like hearing and seeing the river float by every day and the nature surrounding it? Or would you rather have sunrises or sunsets across the lake? Drop a comment below. Which camp are you in? Would you rather have sunrises or sunsets, or would you rather have a natural scene in the woods? And one thing I want to mention, while everybody knows about the lakes in Northern Michigan, there are some rivers that don't get as much notoriety as they should. And outside of my client's lifestyle, this is the next question that really helps bring clarity to the decision of whether to live on a river or a lake. And that's because rivers are generally much less expensive than lakes. Now, there are expensive houses on the river, just like there are expensive houses on the lakes. But if you look at the median sale price for each category, you're going to find that river living is a lot less expensive. When you're talking about lakes like Burt Lake or Mullet Lake, you're going to plan to spend around $1 million, $1.5 million as an entry level on those lakes. Now, there are fixer-upper cabins or maybe properties that need a little bit of work that once in a while you will find for less. But generally speaking, I would budget $1 million and up to be on Burt, Mullet, or Crooked Lake. Now, if you look at Northern Michigan as a map, you could almost break it into regions and give a value of what it costs to have a waterfront home in each of those sections. Burt Lake and Mullet Lake are in the middle of Northern Michigan, meaning if you go further east, it's going to get less expensive. If you go further west, it's going to get more expensive. In fact, one of the areas with the most underrated waterfront in Northern Michigan is located on the east side of the state, east of I-75. Places like Rogers City, Akiak, and Hammond Bay have some of the best waterfront available for the lowest price available, meaning they have a great sandy shoreline at a fraction of the price that the same shoreline would be on the west side of the state. What's great about going east is you can still find waterfront values for $500,000 or $600,000. Now, I know that is a lot of money, but based on today's prices, that is a bargain for quality waterfront. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, once you head west, you're going to see the prices raise very quickly, and for good reason. Places like Petoskey, Bay Harbor, Walloon Lake, Lake Charlevoix, and even Torch Lake have seen prices skyrocket post-COVID. I'm often asked, why did COVID cause waterfront home prices to jump up so much? I don't think it was just waterfront. In fact, all prices in Northern Michigan had a significant increase post-COVID. The reason that waterfront property values in Northern Michigan have gone up so much is there is so much more demand in this area. I always say, for whatever reason, COVID shined a spotlight on Northern Michigan, and a lot of people from around the country that were not familiar with Northern Michigan suddenly learned all about it. And when you're looking for that luxury waterfront experience, if you look at the prices in Walloon Lake, Bay Harbor, or Torch Lake, you're going to find that if you compare those to other luxury waterfront home markets around the country, that our prices are still a bargain. If you're unsure how far your budget to go or what you can afford to buy in today's market, please call me directly at 231-487-6141, and I'd be happy to have a conversation with you to go over the ins and outs of what properties cost today. Now, what if I told you there was a third option? A place where you don't have to pick between the peacefulness of a river and the versatility of a lake. Welcome to the Inland Waterway. The Inland Waterway is a 38-mile network of connected bodies of water. In fact, you can start at Crooked Lake and go all the way north to Mackinac Island. Now, I have done that trip before, and it is definitely not for the faint of heart, but it is something that is incredibly special and only available in Northern Michigan. And why I think this is the best of both worlds is because whether you live on Burt Lake or the Crooked River, you are able to enjoy the other way of living whenever you want. Meaning, if you live on the lake, you can certainly go down the river for the afternoon. And if you live on the river, you can park at one of the sandbars and enjoy the lake. And again, I think this is what makes waterfront living in Northern Michigan so special, is just how many different forms of living there is, meaning you are never going to get bored. Now, I often say if you're lucky enough to live on the water in Northern Michigan, you're lucky enough. But let's be honest, living on the water comes with year-round responsibility. Now, most waterfront houses in Northern Michigan are on year-round maintained roads, meaning the county or the township handles the plowing for you. However, there are some waterfront homes that are on private roads, meaning you and your neighbors have to come up with how those roads are going to be plowed every year. This is especially common with riverfront homes because what is beautiful about a lot of the riverfront property in Northern Michigan, it is totally secluded. The problem that presents is keeping the snow clear in the wintertime. Now let's talk about who each type of living is best for. If you are somebody that wants no neighbors, tons of peacefulness, and a place where you can kick back, relax, and hide from everyone, you're going to want to consider river living on a place like the Jordan River, the Pigeon River, the Sturgeon River. If you're someone that wants to have your boat in your backyard and want to save a little bit of money, check out the bigger Inland Waterway rivers. If you're someone that wants to have the lake in your backyard, enjoy the sunrise and sunsets, then of course you're going to want to be directly on a lake. And like I said, if you want the best of both worlds, consider the Inland Waterway. Now, whether you're leaning towards a lake or a river, Northern Michigan has the perfect fit for your lifestyle. And I would even venture to say, we can find you a waterfront home no matter what your budget is. If you'd like to talk through the options or maybe talk about some of the lesser known bodies of water in Northern Michigan, reach out to me directly at 231-487-6141. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel to get more free insights on everything Northern Michigan real estate related. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the water.